Alright, so today we're going to be making a Slimline Pen kit. So one of these guys. The wood I use for this one is maple, and the video I'm going to show you is how to make this one. So hopefully when you get done you'll pick a nice piece of wood and you'll make one too. Alright, first step in making the Slimline Pen is to get your kit. And you're going to want to empty that sucker out. So don't lose any of the pieces, keep everything together, keep your bag. But we're going to start with these two pieces. And what we're going to do with these is we're going to get a piece of wood. And we're going to lay out how much of that wood we need for each of these pieces. So I'm going to just lay my piece here, I'm going to make a mark. And then my pieces are the same. So after that mark, I'm going to leave a little room for the blade. I'm going to make another mark. And I'm going to cut these two pieces off of this piece of wood here. And that will be where these go. Okay, so moving here to the chop saw, I'm going to cut right on those lines. So I'm going to get right here in the chop saw. I'm going to make sure it lines up right on the lines. And here we go. So that is one cut. And two cuts. So I got my two pieces ready to go now. And we're going to go start laying out to drill the holes. Alright, so before I do any layout, I'm going to make sure that the tubes do fit totally on top of these pieces. If the tube was extending from either end, that would be no good. Seeing that they do, I'm going to take each piece, and I'm going to select one end, it doesn't matter which, and I'm just going to make an X in the center. And this is where we're going to go to the drill press and drill our hole through. So you're going to want to do that on both pieces. Just take some straight edge and make an X to find the center. And when you've got the center for both pieces, we can move over to the drill press. Okay, so once you get over to the drill press and you have your thing laid out, you're going to want to have some kind of secure clamp. I'm using a parallel wood clamp to do this, and I'm just going to work on tightening this in. It's going to give me a nice base in which to hold while I'm drilling through. You want to make sure you have a flat work surface to lay your stock on, so it is at a 90-degree angle to the bit. I can go down and actually check this. If I go down like this, I can see if it's 90 or not with the bit. It is. The bit is right there, there's no angle. And then you're going to want to hold firm this, maybe even clamp it down, and get your piece lined up. And then we can turn the drill press on. You should come up a little to let chips out. And that takes you all the way through. So you're going to do that with both pieces of stock. And I will just speed up for the second one. Alright, so the next thing we got to do is we got to glue these inside of here, which shouldn't be a problem. But first we have to scratch up, whether it's with steel wool or even sandpaper might be better. You want to scratch these up just a little bit to help the CA glue adhere. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to scratch both of these up, take some of that polish off. So you do that on both pieces. And then we're going to use the CA glue. Now you got to be careful with CA glue. Obviously, if you get any on your hands or anything, it's going to stick. So I'm just going through, making sure I get a good coat. Remember, I'm going to push it through here. So that should get the end. So I'm going to put it in. Turn it gently. And I want it to go all the way in, so I'm going to tap it down a little. Make sure it's not coming through either end. And I'm just going to set it to the side. So you do that for both pieces. And that is probably all you'll get done for that day. You got to let the CA glue adhere. If you go too early, it will not stick. And you will be in all sorts of issues. So I think that's going to do it for today. And the next time you come in, you'll be able to go to the next steps. Alright, so once we get our glue dry here, we're going to use this special bit to square up the ends of our blocks. So here we go, clean off here. Going to clamp it in nice and tight and snug. I'm actually going to insert the drill bit in here to get it into a good spot before I finish clamping. That way it'll be in line with the drill bit. And turn her on. And I just want to go down until I am just touching the bushing. So I turn this off. Here, so that's one side. And once again, I can just actually slide this on here. Go down, tighten up. All right. And right there. So I'm going to speed up doing it to the other piece. As you can see, I can take it right down there, right until I hit the top of the bushing, and this will let it go onto the lathe. Alright, so the next step is to go over to the lathe. And we're going to move the lathe out here, and we got a mandrel here that we're going to put our pieces on. I got one for the middle here. So this piece is going to go on this end. Going to drop this here. This piece goes in the middle. And I'm going to drop this one on here. And this piece goes on the end. And we're just going to tighten that up as tight as I can get it. Now, when I'm turning this down, I'm going to want the diameter of the pen to be the same as we have right here. And then I got my tool rest. Try to square that up even. Keep it really close. Move the tailstock in. Going to tighten the tailstock, so I might actually loosen it before I get started. Move it in. Sure it up. Alright, so before I actually start turning, I've cut away from the video to kind of show you some of my tools. So this tool right here is what I'm going to start with, and this is a roughing gouge. And we would use this tool to get started and bring the stock down to round. It's going to take a lot of material off very quickly, so this is a roughing gouge. The next tool I'm going to do work with, and most of my work with, is going to be this scraper. It's a round nose scraper. Has a nice flat edge, and we'll get to do a lot of our shaping and taking down with the round nose scraper. Two other tools I'll be using possibly is a skew. This is for more fine or detailed work. It's got a nice flat edge on both sides. And finally, a parting tool. I might use, this would be used to either cut stock off with its very small head, or it would be used to cut the stock down to size. Like I might go in and cut the diameter down to where I want it to be before I finish with my round nose or my skew. So these are the 4 tools I will possibly be using for this project. So let's see how we do. Like I said, I'm going to start with the roughing gouge. It's sharpened ahead of time. And when I'm roughing this, I actually want to have this turned up. And I'll show you why. So like, if I'm going at a slow speed, see how much it kicks? If I turn on a high speed, it's going to kick less. Now, this isn't true with all things, but these pens are so thin that this is okay. And we're just going to use the roughing gouge to take it down to size. And just go in nice and even. Might need to lower my tool rest a bit. Now, the roughing gouge, that takes off a large part of material very quickly. Well, like I said, for this to be a good pen, we need to get this part here down so it meets up with each of these bushings in between here. So for that, I'm going to switch over to my round nose scraper. It's going to give me a little more control. Now you have to make a decision in your profile. Do you want to have a rounded middle that's a little higher on the ends? Or do you want it to be the same all the way across? That's a decision you have to make. Now, like for me, I think I'm going to leave the back half kind of fat. Or maybe I'll leave the front half a little fat. The back half, if you want to have the clip on, you got to take down even. So that's what I'm going to do here. All right, so for this last little bit here, I want to take that down. So I'm going to use the skew to get it really close. I'm going to leave it a little tall because I still got to do sanding. But I can come in here with the skew and I can kind of line up the ends because they're the most important part. So I'm just going to come in here, I'm going to feel how close I am. I can probably sand all of this down, but these ends are exactly where I want them to be. And the rest you can kind of figure out what you want to do with. I'm going to try to make mine kind of level on this one. This one I might leave the ridge in there. All right, so that's all turned. Now I've got to start working through the sandpapers. So I'm going to take my tailstock off. I'm going to take out some sandpaper. I'm going to start with 120. You can start with 80 if yours is really damaged, but I've got pretty good cuts here. I only see one spot where I really might need to take it down, which is right here. The rest of it looks pretty good. So I'm going to get started here. And you should take your time. Now I'm trying to be aggressive here, and I was going a little too fast, and you can see I did burn my wood a little, and we can take that off. But you do have to be aware, if you're going too fast with the lathe, you do run the risk of burning your wood through friction. And what I'm really focusing on here is that the transition from these pieces should be very close to even. And if you got a high spot, you're going to feel that on your actual pen. So like I can feel these two pieces, I've got a little bit of high spot. I'm even thinking of going back in and trying to turn them down. You can also try to just touch up and sand with it off in those spots. That's up to you. But I do have an 80 grit piece of paper, so I'm just going to quickly see if I can take it down just a little bit more. And just really focus on those ends. All right, so I'm working my way through the grits here, so I'm up to 150. As you work your way up, you should get as slow as you can on the lathe. Now I'm moving up to a 220. And I actually turn it off, and before I put any finish on here, I sand across this way to try to take out any grooves I may have made in the lines. I'm feeling pretty good transition on all my spots, so I'm not really too concerned about that. And now we're ready for finish. And for these pens, we're going to be doing the finish with acrylic or CA glue, whichever you have available. So I have CA glue available, and that is what I'm going to be using. Now, it's possible to use an accelerant with the CA glue. I don't have any available to me, but that is something often used. Now, if you are using CA glue and you have gloves, I would suggest you use them. I do not, but it doesn't take a lot to go a long way. So here we go. Very simple process. Just going to put the CA glue on the rag here and move it onto our material. Now I will probably put 2 or 3 coats on this and let it dry, so it's going to take some time to dry. But you're probably going to want 2 or 3 coats on before you're done. And then we are going to do a ton of sanding and polishing. So you can get your first coat on. I usually put 2 coats on before I even think about sanding. I'm gonna have to let this stand to dry. It's one of the downsides of this project. If you have an accelerant, you could use it, but I do caution you because sometimes if you use the accelerant too soon, you get ghosting white lines in there. So this is where we're at. I'll be back after I put 2 or 3 more coats on. So you're not gonna have to watch that. I'm gonna show you the sanding and buffing at the end, and then we'll go on to assembly. All right, so once we have the pen sanded all the way, which I've done up to 400 grit, which will give me a nice satin finish. If you want a glossy finish, you're gonna have to go way higher than that. But once you've got the pen sanded all the way, we can take it off of here. And once we take it off, some of the pieces might be stuck together, some of them might not. We're gonna take it off and we are going to bring it over to the bench, and then we're gonna start assembling. Okay, so let's take a walk. All right, so for the next step, I'm going to take my pen here, and I've got my multiple pieces. Got my 2 halves. I have a front piece I have to press in. I have that mechanism that needs to get pressed in. This goes in the mechanism. This ring will float between the 2 pieces, and then I have my end pieces. So what I got to do now is I have to sand the ends of my piece just to make sure that everything's okay. So like, I'll get a piece of 400 or more sandpaper out. I'm going to sand the ends and around the base to make sure everything looks good on both pieces. Sometimes you'll get a little CA glue on the outside of the pieces, and that's okay. And then you got to really decide which piece you want to be in the hand and which piece you do not. And for me, I did both of them about the same, so it doesn't really matter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them over to my vise here. So I got a vise here, and let's see if I can angle this a little better. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open this vise up, and we're going to use it as a press. Now, you can get really fancy and buy a press that is just for the pen making, and that'll be a little nicer, but for what we're doing, we should be all right just using the vise. Now, I am going to grab a block of scrap wood pine that's nice and soft to make sure I don't damage any of my pen kit. And I'm going to just kind of see which side I want to end up where. And I kind of like looking at the end of the pen. I think it's going to go really good here. And all I do is I slowly crank my vise forward. Right in there, right on the pen. Okay, so I got my vise right in there, went right to the edge of the pen. Looks good. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to insert this piece in here. And to do this, you want to go right up until about that little line. And we can actually go slow with this. Got to be careful, make sure it's lining up straight. Don't try to force it. So I'm going in, making sure it's staying straight. It's trying to tilt on me, but it shouldn't be a force thing. I'm going in here. I'm going to back out, and what I'm going to do to test this is you can actually screw the pen in now. You can put it in, and you can screw the pen in, and you can turn it all the way, and you see how far the end is. That's not going to be far enough for me. It's just barely sticking out, so I'm going to unscrew the pen, and I'm going to just press it in a little further. So I'm just going to press it in a little bit further. And now I'm going to take the pen and I'm going to try again, see if this is in far enough. So it's coming out most of the way. It twists in, twists out, and I could go just a little bit further, so you really want to go all the way to that line for the rotation. And once I get that, I think we will be good to go on this part of the pen. And that's it. Get my pen in here, I'm going to twist. And that looks real good. take my little piece of wax off of here, and I should be able to start writing at my own leisure. Now, if you wanted, you could push it just a little bit further, but there does come a point where you can push no more. Okay, so this is ready. Works fine. Got this little piece just slides on here, just like that. Lines up well. And then I'm going to see which end of the pen fits with that ring better. So that looks good. A lot of guys will do this so the grains match up. Try to get it so it looks good. They might flip and say that it would look better this way, maybe. So you got to do that yourself and see which end you think is going to be better. Okay? And once you have figured that out, you can just squeeze the end cap on. I'm just double checking to make sure this is the end I wanted. Yep. So you just double check, and then you have the option. You can add this piece or not. I am deciding to add it. If you wanted a fat back of your pen, you may not add it, but I'm going to add it right here. I'm going to start cranking this in. And this is probably a much easier press. So I'm just going to press that piece in there. And once it's pressed in there, you can install it on your pen. And you have a very fancy pen. And you can twist this around so the grains line up however you want them to when it's open or closed. But overall, that is the project. A nice slimline pen kit.